Okay, so here's the deal. A lot of people think that they have a boundary problem. Hmm. Most of the time, that's not actually the problem at all. Most adults know at least somewhere inside of themselves what's not working for them, right? They know what's draining them. They know what they resent. They know where they're overextended. They know where they feel intruded upon. And they know where they keep saying yes after their whole body has screamed at them no. Right? So this is usually not the mystery. The mystery is why they know all of that and still backtrack a second another person reacts. That, my friend, is the real issue. Because boundaries, limits, limitations, right, don't usually fall apart. When people are confused, they fall apart because something rises inside of them when they try to hold a line. Guilt, panic, the urge to explain, the urge to soften, the urge to make sure that the other person understands before the boundary counts, right? The urge to comfort the other person for having feelings about the very thing you needed to say. That's why I keep saying that a lot of people don't have a boundary problem. They have a guilt problem, a nervous system problem, a self-trust problem, a people-pleasing problem, an approval problem. I still need your reaction to tell me whether my boundaries are valid problem, right? And that's all very different, right? Because a boundary system is not about controlling them. It's about leading you. And that one distinction will change almost everything if you actually let it in. A boundary is not how do I get you, right, that other person to behave. A boundary system is here's what I'm available for, here's what I'm not available for, and here's what works for me, and here's what doesn't work for me, and here's where I stop handing myself away to keep this interaction comfortable. And that's not being mean. That's being mature and showing up as yourself, honest, in a state of honesty, right? Open, honest, genuine, transparent, and authentic. That's mature. But many people, unfortunately, weren't taught that. They were taught to keep the peace, to not make things harder, to be flexible, to be understanding, to not be selfish, to not be too much, to not disappoint people, to not create tension, to make things easier, to be good. And now, as adults, when we finally try to say, that doesn't work for me, I'm not available for that, I need more notice, I can't do that, just plain no. Their whole system lights up like they're committing some kind of crime. And that's the conditioning talking. That's where people start doing the thing that ruins their own boundary system. They say it, and then they immediately over-explain it. They start giving context, justifying. They start managing the other person's discomfort. They start reassuring. They start softening the line until it no longer has a line in it at all. And why? Because a clean boundary feels exposed when you're used to buying your belonging through over explanation. And that's a hard truth, but it's real. A lot of over explaining is not clarity. It's anxiety with a lot of extra words, and anxiety is not personal leadership. That's why calm matters, and not some fake robotic kind of dead-eyed, I have no feelings kind of calm, right? Like real calmness, the kind that says, I'm not letting my activation write my whole sentence structure. Because a boundary is not just words, it's a position. And if the words say one thing, but your body is chasing after the other person's approval, the boundary's not stable yet. A stable boundary system is clean. It sounds like, it doesn't work for me. I'm not going to be available for that. I could do this, but not that. It also can be as simple as, no, thank you. Not now. It could be as clear as, I just need more notice than that. Or that sounds fun for you. I'm going to pass. Right? Just say, I'm going to pass. Or you know what? I'm just not open to taking that on. Not cruel, not dramatic, not flooded, right? Certainly don't want it to come out like some big TED talk, right? We just want it clean, short, simple, calm, cool, collected. That's where the deeper work comes in. Because if you can't tolerate what comes back after the boundary system, limits and limitations, right? You're going to keep on doing it. And that's what most people need to understand. I know a lot of you in this space need to hear it, right? If you can't tolerate the other person's disappointment, right? If you can't tolerate their disappointment, you're going to soften. If you can't tolerate someone else's confusion, you're going to over-explain it. If you can't tolerate another person's anger, you're going to fold. If you can't tolerate their guilt trip, right? You're going to reopen what needed to stay closed. And if you can't tolerate your own discomfort, right? You're going to abandon yourself before you even have to. You're not even going to allow yourself to consider sitting in and moving through your discomfort. So the real question becomes this. Write it down. What reaction from other people makes me backtrack the fastest? And then, of course, you have to observe. You have to investigate. You need to gather data, right? Is it their silence? Is it their sadness, their pushback, their frustration, their misunderstanding, their annoyance, their disappointment? What is it? Gather your data because the answers matter, right? The issue is not always the boundary system itself or the limit or the limitation. And if you haven't learned my filtrating boundary system method, please raise your hand, ask me, I'll send it to you, I'll teach it to you, right? Because boundaries is a filtration system backed by healthy limits and limitations, which are those hard, fast stops, right? So it's not always that boundary itself, it's the issue that a lot of people don't see, right? It's your tolerance for what comes after it. And it gets really confusing, right? This is where people start to confuse discomfort with wrongdoing. They think, I feel bad, therefore I must be doing something bad, right? Sometimes you feel bad because you're doing something new. Sometimes you feel bad because the old role is breaking. It can be hard, right, to let that go. Sometimes you feel bad because you're no longer over functioning in the way other people benefited from. And sometimes you feel bad because your nervous system still associates clarity with danger, right? It's vulnerable to be open, honest, genuine, transparent, and authentic, right? That's allowing some significant vulnerability into your life. But it doesn't mean the boundaries, right? It doesn't mean your boundaries, limits, and limitations are wrong. It means that your conditioning is louder. It's been around longer. Okay. So that's what we're working on here. This week, right? Not just saying no, staying with yourself after the no, not just identifying your line, holding your line without panicking because somebody else had a reaction to it. Now it's not just becoming clearer, but steadier, because that calmness is going to protect your clarity. And if you can learn that, your boundaries, limits, and limitations stop sounding right, like anxiety dressed up as honesty and start sounding like self-respect. So why do boundaries fall apart even when you know exactly what is not working for you? I'd love to hear from you.